Hey parents, I'd like to invite you to have a heart-to-heart discussion on a movie that's came out on recently on Netflix. It's called Adolescence. And the reason why I bring this up is because how you and I grew up when we were kids is very different than how kids are growing up nowadays, especially when it comes to social media, when it comes to dating, when it comes to puberty. Very, very different. Because the idea is that today's teenage boys, they're navigating through this digital landscape and they have this distorted understanding of what masculinity is, what that relationship looks like, and their own self-worth or lack of it because of all these social media accounts. And often this is without the awareness of the adults because the adults are somewhat clueless. The parents are somewhat clueless. And the one big red flag that I want to address to bring awareness to all the parents that's listening to this is when our kids' voices gets unheard, they either shut down or they explode. If you haven't already seen the episodes, go watch it. If you have seen it, let's talk more about it, or just hear me out, and then so you can understand as you progress through the series, you understand what I'm talking about. So essentially what happened, to recap really quick, is Jamie, the main character, supposedly had stabbed a girl multiple times. And Jamie repeated saying, no, I did not commit the crime. No, I did not kill the girl. And he even confronted his dad in close quarter and with just him and dad saying that, no, I did not commit any crime. No, I did not kill her at all. That was the preface of the entire series. When I'm watching this, I want to believe that Jamie, that he did not commit the murder. Let me give you a real world example what that looks like when kids feel unsafe and they don't want to talk about it because they don't want to get in trouble, even if it means that this kid already stabbed this person, committed murder. When I was in college, oftentimes I would go to my friend's house, work on our motorcycle, and oftentimes I go to his house. He's much older. Oftentimes I would hear his kid wailing because his mom was beating him, corporal punishment. This is traditional parenting, right? And at times I really felt bad for the kid because it's like full-on wailing, like crying bloody murder. And I wish I was able to help him do something with their family. At the time I was in college, I didn't know anything about psychology. I didn't know anything about children behavior, but I always felt bad for the kid. Now, fast forward a couple of years later, at the time the kid was about 8 years old. Fast forward only a couple of years later, now the kid is in middle school. And one day, I remember the father specifically telling me that he's just like, I don't get my son. Son, you are a bad liar. We know you're lying. Why do you keep lying? Because when you're lying, mama's gonna just smack the crap out of you. Why do you keep lying? And that question always lingered in the back of my mind because when I finally have my kid, or in the future, when I wanna have my children, how do we get our kids not lying? And that was my specific question. And as I delve into psychology and learning about motivation over the last 20 years, I was able to find the answer. Okay, so we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Now, in episode 3, you're starting seeing all these triggers start coming up. And if you guys are not familiar with what trigger is in psychology, it's basically an emotional response that gets activated by a certain situation, a word or memory, an event, a feeling. Not often really ties back to pain, fear, or trauma. It's like having this invisible button that somebody's pushing you that causes somebody to overreact, to be angry, or they mentally checked out, their withdrawal, or they're in distress. Even if the current moment doesn't logically warrant it. It's like soldiers coming back from Iraq, from Afghanistan, and they're going through PTSD. When they hear a loud bang, they're already, their brain is wired looking for danger. And that's another example of trigger. In episode 3, three main triggers that came up for Jamie when the psychologist Ariston and Jamie, they were having the first confrontation. Basically, Jamie's telling, hey, I don't want to be in prison. I didn't stab her. This place sucks. I hear other kids screaming. Why am I in prison anyway? Why am I here? Right? And why is also my friend, who is also part of this accusation, why is he not in prison? Why am I in prison? And as they're talking, this dialogue going back and forth, Jamie gets even more irritated and even more agitated to the point where Jamie finally stood up and he's like walking around and just super angry. And the psychologist is telling him like, Jamie, please sit down, and keeps reminding him over and over and over, please sit down. And finally, that is over the tipping point. So finally, Jamie's just had it. You can't tell me to sit down. And he smacks the hot chocolate on the table and the hot chocolate spills everywhere. So the psychologist, she had to take a mental break because she's starting to get triggered. She's starting to get traumatized. She walks out of the room to get a breath of fresh air. So meanwhile, the psychologist goes look into the video camera and see what Jamie is doing and how he's reacting and things like that, reading his body language. And what happened is a couple of minutes later, the psychologist comes back into the room and Jamie was able to calm down. To help you guys decode what's going on in their background is Jamie's reptilian brain, his limbic system was getting triggered into what was past trauma, their trigger part. So he was going to flight or fight mode, or actually known as survival mode. So oftentimes in survival mode, somebody goes into a fight mode or they get into a flight mode. They just want to get out of it. So in this case, Jamie's a fighter. So he chooses juvenile masculinity to fight against this. So that's exactly what happened. So that's the first trigger. And oftentimes when that happens, and that's basically saying like, you can't tell me to sit down. And those are key cues basically telling us that his voice is not heard. And chances are, obviously they didn't show it in the dialogue between the father and the son, but oftentimes the parents really overpowers the kids. So what do you mean by overpower? Screams over a kid, yell over kids, make ultimatum, make demands, to the point where the kid gets a pressure cooker, right? Everything's built up. Obviously he can't raise his voice to his father or his mom because of the hierarchy, right? These are mom and dad, and he has to listen to the parents. So he pushes all these down. So when he does have a moment, he just lashes out. And this is very tall sound. When somebody gets triggered is when their voice is not heard. They start screaming and yelling. That's exactly what modeling what their parents is doing exactly. Okay, so his needs are not met. Again, the limbic system, the reptilian brain gets triggered, you go into flight or flight mode. What it really is when somebody goes into flight or flight mode and survival mode, deep down inside, he's really scared. And when I say scared, there's a whole bunch of unknowns. So obviously there's a kind of a stranger. He doesn't really know the psychologist. He only met her a couple of times. A different environment. Obviously, if you're locked in jail, you'll be scared too. There's a bunch of unknowns. And he's wondering if he's going to jail. And he's trying to deny everything, right? So if his life is completely over, if he's convicted for murder. You guys getting this? Psychologist Ariston walks out of the room, like I mentioned, comes back, and then he calms down. And this is when the second trigger happened. More dialogue goes back and forth. And Jamie goes, his second belief is, I am ugly. So rather than psychologist Ariston ask him, why do you feel this way? She goes, why do you put a label on that? How do you feel about being ugly? So that's already assuming that he's already ugly, that she's imprinting on him that he is ugly. So again, he gets triggered, limbic system kicks in. So that's why he's like, you're putting words in my mouth. You put me in a trap in here. So what we say to our kids matter, things like that. How do you feel about being ugly already presupposes that person is ugly. The presupposes part is really important. So again, Jamie's limbic kicks in, stands up, flips a chair upside down, and before he flips out again, this time there's a circuit breaker. So basically what that is, a security guard comes in and intervenes with the situation, and then Jamie's backs down. Now, understand that Jamie it's a very super smart kid because he knows exactly how to behave with a psychologist, which is a woman, versus the security guard. He knows that he can't get away with that masculinity. The security guard would just pull him out, but he's smart enough that he can get away with it, and that's why he's throwing all these tantrums, like these physical violence at her. So then here's what the truth really came out. The truth is that his friends, Tommy, Ryan, the truth is that they all get bullied at school. So now you only have the family aspect of dad suppressing his feelings. At school, he's already feeling ashamed. He's already feeling like, I'm not good enough. At school, other kids also bullying him as well, telling them they're not good enough. And this is to a point where other kids will actually spit from the class's outside window to them. What's worse is that they have Instagram account, these social media account. The other kids would tag them, they bully them, make fun of them. What was really interesting about this question was the psychologist brought up is why did you sign up for an Instagram account? And Jamie goes, well, so that I can look at other people's accounts. So we know this as the thief of joy is comparison. When we start comparing with other people, we'll never ever be happy. And this is a conversation that the parents have had. So stop comparing and really take them off of Instagram account. And this is huge things I want to bring up because over the last 2 years, I had the tremendous amount of opportunity and being fortunate and honored to serve as the captain at what's called a Global Youth Leadership Summit. This is where every year it's a camp, a leadership camp, where we bring about 240 kids from 14 years old to 17 years old all over the world, 35 different countries to gather about leadership, learning about leadership. One of the exercises was called Walk of Truth. What that is we're not here to judge. When a question is asked, if this happened to you, then you walk, right? So here's the thing. Last 2 years, the average statistics when this question was asked was, how many of you know somebody tried to commit suicide, not just verbally, but actually had a plan written out or communicated with you? They had a plan to try to kill themselves. Guess how many of the kids walk in percentage? On average, of the last 2 years I've been, it's about 70%. And the question is, why aren't we as parents talking to our kids about this? And part of that suicidal thoughts comes from depression. Well, if you really understand depression in a nutshell, is basically depressed, right? So we depress all of our feelings inside. We don't talk about it. That's why we have depression. So why aren't we as parents talking to our kids about how they feel? So I know that there's a gap where at a certain point, the teenage boys or girls, they don't want to talk to us anymore. I understand that. We need to have that conversation, right? You agree? So let's move on to the third trigger. So the third trigger is actually really, really interesting because at the end, when the psychologist is about to leave, Jamie asked her, do you like me or not? And it's not a romantic way, do you have attraction to me or for me or not? But his question is, can I feel accepted? Because I feel like my mom and dad don't accept me. My sister don't accept me. The society doesn't accept me. My only friends that accepts me, we're kind of losers. That's where we get bullied all the time. I just want to feel accepted. He's asking her this question, and as security gives him a bear hug and drags Jamie out of the room. And Jamie repeats over and over, don't you like me? Don't Jamie like me a bit? Do you not like me? What I want to share with you is from that perspective, we as human, we have two biggest human fears. The fear, I am not enough. And if I am not enough, I won't be loved. So I am not enough, I won't be loved. And what that really means is in order for us to survive, we have to be in a social group. So think about million years ago. So a lot of these animals are born like horses, giraffes. The minute they're born, they can start walking, they can start trotting around. We as human, when we're born up to age 12, basically, or even adulthood, our 20s, we're pretty vulnerable, right? Vulnerable to attack. So in order for us to have that protection, in order to have the strength, is we all need to stick together. So very tribal, very group. So therefore we learn that, hey, if I don't contribute enough to the group, then I am not enough. If I am not enough, then I won't be loved within this tribe. That's why we all want to be a part of a group. We all want to be accepted. Jamie somehow had this belief that he is ugly, that nobody likes him, that he believes that he doesn't belong anywhere. He's an outcast, and an outcast hanging out with two other friends, loser friends. Is this all making sense? So he just want to be accepted. That's his biggest human fear, right? We all have this. Let's go and wrap up, conclude is my big one advice to all of the parents out there. This is not coming from blame or shame, because I've experienced through this too, because my parents were authoritarian parents. They rule with an iron fist. It's my way or the highway, the authoritarian way. That absolutely works until it doesn't. And what do I mean by that? When the kids are younger, they'll listen to you, but at some point as they grow older and older, they become teenagers, they'll stop listening to you, or they tune out, or they'll agree with you. But what happened is in Jamie, in this case, his dad actually even said, my dad used to crack me with a belt, and I don't want to do this to him. So even though he took out the corporal punishment out, but the yelling, the shaming, the punishment, chances are still there, because his dad also had trauma from his dad. Does that make sense? When your kid does listen, so you want your kid to listen is basically the positive intent behind authoritarian parenting, right? But at what cost? Because the cost is, number one lesson is punishment just make kids better liars. Don't me going back talking about when I used to hang out with my friend, it just makes them better liars, because what our mind does is we avoid pain and we seek pleasure. So the positive intent of somebody who's a liar, a habitual liar, is because they don't want to get in trouble because they got yelled by too many times, they got punished too many times. So they're going to do absolutely they can to avoid pain. And because when they lie, they think they have an opportunity or chance, they're going to roll the dice and say, I can get away with this. And if they get with this, we're, ooh, I'm a great liar. Is this all making sense? They think they can get away with it. Punishment really just make kids better liars, if you think about it. And lesson two is that kids would rather talk with their friends than coming to you, especially teenagers, when things goes wrong. Because what happens? You parent with authoritarian, the traditional parenting way, they can't connect with you, because when they talk to you, you're just going to blame them. You're going to play out like, you should have known better. Why are you doing this? What's wrong with you? You have all this potential. You're screwing this up. There's all these judgment, all these blame, rather than we actually sit down and just listen to them. So going back to Global Youth Leadership Summit, the other question was asked, how many of you guys been in a car, remember this is 14 to 17 years old, been in a car with somebody who is driving under the influence of alcohol or some kind of recreational drugs? About 25% of them walk through the walk of truth. And again, my question is, why aren't we as parents talking about this? Again, not coming from blame or shame or saying what's wrong with our kid. Why are we talking about this? Because that one split decision that Jamie did screwed up his entire life. The one decision that he decided to stab the girl screwed up his entire life. And this is the message we need to speak with our kids. You make a really bad decision, you're going to screw up your entire life. Is this a decision do you want to make? So in essence, we're teaching our kids how to make better decisions, which leads to point number 3. Now, you can scare your child into following rules, but you'll never earn their respect, right? So it's like you ever had work with a really bad manager, micromanaging, always yelling at you, just berate you at any moment they can. do you respect that manager or respect that leader, the CEO or executive? No, of course you're terrified of them. I mean, you want to do your job, you don't want to get fired, but you don't respect them. The moment that you have an opportunity to move to a different department or out of this company to get a better job, better leadership, more pay money, guess what? You're leaving. Tell me if I'm wrong. But with kids, they can't leave us. They're our kids. They're not going to leave us. So what do? They lose respect. And when respect, we also lose connection. And this is from a respond. You keep messing up. You're not doing this. Why aren't you like other kids? You start comparing. You're going to have consequences at the end. If they fear you more than they trust you, they'll completely shut you out. And I've worked with enough parents. I've seen that happening over and over and over again. And it's even harder after when they get into teenage years, because I know you've been a teenager, I've been a teenager, we all been rebellious teenagers at some point. I totally get it. And then it's going to get even worse. So these are the things I want to share with you. And the last thing I want to share with you is remember to connect before correct. So the answer, the antidote to all of this is remember to connect before correct. Understand from their point of view why they're doing this. Well, why did they make this decision? Not coming from blame or shame like, oh, that's an idiot thing you did, right? Why you're smart enough. Why'd you do that? Help them find out what was their positive intent of doing what they just did, their positive intent. So it's what that means is what benefit them. Why did they do this? Why do you think that was a good idea? And then help them walk through the process. Was that really a good idea? So you tell me. So remember to connect before correct. I hope this is all really helpful for you. If you want to hear more about this, reach out to me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Put your comment, subscribe to this channel. Ask us any questions you have. I'd be more than happy to respond. Until then, live purposely, love passionately, and be the most remarkable parent that you can be. We'll see you in future sessions.